Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, depending on which part of our beautiful blue planet you are. Welcome to this new webinar in an important and robust series of events detailing the case of Tai Ji Men, importantly recounting time and again the pain endured by its Shifu, or master, and Dizi, or disciples, and appreciating all possible considerations that scholars find worth to share with the larger public. I am Marco Respiniti, an Italian national. I work as a journalist and I serve as director in charge of Bitter Winter, the online magazine that informs daily on religious liberty violations and the state of human rights throughout the world. Bitter Winter can be read freely on the web at www.bitterwinter.org, and it's an operation of CESNUR, the Center for the Studies on New Religious Movements, based in Torino, Italy, that co-hosts today's webinar with Human Rights Without Frontier, or HRWF. Today, among our distinguished speakers, we have also Professor Massimo Introvigne and Mr. Willy Fautré, directors, respectively, of CESNUR and HRWF. Today, the world celebrates the International Day of the Abolition of Slavery, established in 1986 by the United Nations General Assembly. On a day like today, we want to focus once again on the case of Tai Ji Men. But what is Tai Ji Men? And why we speak of a Tai Ji Men case? We at Bitter Winter have a special section on the Tai Ji Men and its case. Some 75 articles have been published in that section so far, indicating how important the topic is per se, and also as a paradigmatic example of the use of administrative tools to discriminate against a spiritual movement, that is to say, in violation of religious liberty. Tai Ji Men is a menpai, a Chinese word similar to a school of Qigong, self-cultivation and martial arts. It was established in its modern form in Taiwan by Dr. Hong Tao-tse, who is also well known throughout the world for its peace activities. In 1996, a politically motivated crackdown in Taiwan targeted several spiritual movements accused of not having supported the presidential candidate who eventually won the election that year. Tai Ji Men was also a target, although in fact it had not taken any political position, and Dr. Hong, his wife, and two Dizi were arrested. Eventually, Taiwan's Supreme Court declared the defendants innocent of all charges. However, in parallel to the criminal prosecution, a tax case had been started and tax bills issued.
Sì, perfetto, quasi.
However, in parallel to the criminal prosecution, although the Supreme Court had clarified that there had been no tax evasion based on a technicality, the National Taxation Bureau maintained the tax bill for the year 1992. Because of this bill, in 2020, land intended for building a self-cultivation center for Tai Ji Men Dizi was seized, auctioned unsuccessfully for 2 times, and then confiscated. This generated widespread street protests in Taiwan, which continue to this day. You heard it well, the persecution of Tai Ji Men has been continuing for 24 and more years. As said earlier, today the world celebrates the International Day for the Abolition of Slavery. Slavery is an horrible crime against human beings and humanity. The UN chose December the 2nd for celebrating its Abolition Day because on December 2, 1949, the Convention for the Suppression of the Traffic in Persons and of the Exploitation of the Prostitution and Others was approved by the United Nations General Assembly. This allows me to draw a connection and to share a final reflection. The connection is to our webinar on November 23rd, 2 days before the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women. We then discussed the persecution against Tai Ji Men as a peculiar case of violence waged against women, as women of Tai Ji Men have always suffered peculiarly. How can we not think twice to the pain endured by women in the Tai Ji Men movement on the anniversary of the approval of the convention, who called for the suppression of the traffic in persons and of the exploitation of prostitution, which are contemporary forms of slavery that above all target women? My final reflection deals with another form of slavery happening when people become tools in the hands of a state that exploits them for profit through unjust and tyrannical taxes. As American law professor Kenneth Jacobs, a Tai Ji Men case legal expert, often reminds us the power to tax is the power to destroy. It is indeed. But first, the power to tax is the power to enslave. Of this, we shall discuss today through the precious contribution of scholars, experts, and testimonials. Let us then begin our program today by viewing an important video. Thank you.
The bell of peace is an auspicious and peaceful bell which resonates with heaven and earth. It's a promise about world love and peace. The article, "The Love of the World, a Declaration of Peace," is our common wish. Ringing the bell with the wish makes all living beings prosper and love and peace last forever. Ringing the bell that saves the world could raise people's awareness. Only by congregating the wishes for love and peace will all living beings be able to thrive and love and peace be sustained forever.
One of the most significant purposes of religions is to purify the minds and then stabilize the society. Every religion shares the same value of love, no exception. We all want to live happily and long in this world. So we need to be physically healthy. Tai Ji Men is good at both, strengthen the physical health and cultivate the mind.
Tai Ji Men's performance, whether in martial arts or dancing, are all marked as first class, and extremely good. You can feel it, just see how excited the audience is. Excellent. So thank you very much.
It is highly relevant for Tai Ji Men to arrange a goodwill cultural trip to Australia to participate in an international sporting event in Sydney Olympics, because I believe that the meaning of the millennium is for human beings to forgive, reconcile, and live in peace with one another. The action is very meaningful. Today, I wish our Tai Ji Men Cultural Goodwill Group the best of luck on their journey and their holy mission.
The Praying to Heaven ceremony is a very important and meaningful activity. With literature and art elements and also cultural program, the ceremony will benefit the overall development of the country, as well as a positive trend and development. Excellent. It's incredible. Even the heavens are blessing you. For example, today we have mild wind and pretty sunshine, and the temperature is really pleasant. All the participants are very pleased. This is extremely rare, blessing, the heavens are helping you.
Dr. Hong, I believe, is such a great person who has accomplished this, which is quite remarkable in our society. If this can be propagated over the world, our planet will undoubtedly be a better place to live.
Tai Ji Men's spirit, Tai Ji culture, and Tai Ji Men's value are all very admirable, in my opinion. Dr. Hong has been working hard without too much external attention and overcome extreme obstacles to achieve the accomplishment today. I believe we can all learn something from him.
The meeting with Dr. Hong took place in a very peaceful and pleasant mood. Working together for world peace is a manner of caring for the globe, and the Tai Ji Men is well known for it.
The health of body and mind is related to our Tai Chi, to the sun and the moon. Then I also hope that we can introduce our martial arts to the whole world, in a very peaceful, healthy, happy and upward way, like the cycle of sunrise and sunset. Then we can achieve peace of the world. I sincerely believe that the Tai Ji Men will bring forth happiness, joy, health, and wealth to the 5 billion population in the world. This is something I believe the Tai Ji Men can accomplish because it is political impartial. All it wants is to get all people in the world live in peace and everyone healthy, which is the common desire. I believe Tai Ji Men can do this.
一心是在快乐之源。掌门人洪道子1999年8月1日演讲致辞于美国旧金山。
Tai Ji Men's wide-ranging and profound culture is endless. Tai Ji Men Dizi are devoted and kind-hearted, friends to all. The spirit of Tai Ji Men is that we are all of the same flesh and blood, and we love one another as brothers. Tai Ji Men Cultural Goodwill Group chose this window on the world, that is the U.S., in hopes that more people of different faiths and races, be they rich or poor, might all be blessed, like us, with happy and with joyful hearts.
Tai Ji Men, and they traveled to America for the very first time to participate in St. Barry. We've got a bit of a...
From the torchlight parades in Seattle and drum ceremony in Washington State Capitol to Capitol Hill.
The Mayor of the District of Columbia does hereby proclaim March 22nd, 2000 as Tai Ji Men Qigong Academy Day in Washington, D.C., and we welcome these international ambassadors of peace and goodwill.
So Mayor Harris welcomes Dr. Hong, and he declares September 16th, today, as Dr. Hong Day, and we congratulate you.
Tom Bates, Mayor of the City of Berkeley, hereby proclaim August 5th, 2005 to be Federation of World Peace and Love Day in the City of Berkeley.
Or never again. And with that I say, amen.
of spirit, which is quite valuable. We collaborate in making our world a lovely place.
The Tai Ji Men ceremony of praying to heaven for blessings for all, in my opinion, was a very memorable and significant occasion.
This is the highest ceremony for the Taoist community, and it is incredibly passionate and successful for Dr. Hong to have the heart to launch our participation in this event from all walks of life.
Democracy and through reaching out to each other.
With the hopes that information technology will not only bring prosperity but peace to people.
I wish everyone to be able to forgive all.
It was a great video, very inspiring, and it was very important to see how different religious community welcome the spiritual efforts and work for peace of Tai Ji Men. We now begin with the first session of our today's webinar. And the first speaker, it is my privilege to introduce Dr. Massimo Introvigne, founder of the Center for Studies on New Religion, and my friend and colleague, editor-in-chief of Peter Witter magazine. Massimo, the floor is yours.
Thank you. It's very interesting that we have this webinar on International Day for the Abolition of Slavery. And it immediately reminded me that in 2014, I was invited for a conference on modern forms of slavery and denial of religious liberty by the order of the, organized by the Order of the Trinitarians in Montreal, Canada. And I accepted, not for the last reason that I was familiar with the Trinitarians, a religious order founded in 1198 by a French aristocrat, John of Mata, after a vision of Jesus holding by the hand two slaves, one Muslim and one Christian. And so John of Mata decided to work for the slaves. And I was curious how the religious order he founded, the Trinitarians, are working for the slaves in the 21st century. Remarkably, the Trinitarians also tried to make life better for Muslim slaves in Christian countries, but their main job was to collect the money and pay the ransom and rescue the Christian slaves taken off the Mediterranean coast by the Barbary pirates of northern Africa. Now, Barbary pirates continued to raid the coasts of Italy, France, and Spain until the 19th century. And in the region where I live, Tuscany, for instance, it was a very serious problem. In her memories, Oriana Fallaci, the Italian writer who became a famous critic of Islam after 9/11, explained she had personal reason for this because in the 18th century, one of her ancestors called Daniello Launaro was kidnapped by the pirates from a beach in Tuscany and taken to North Africa, where unfortunately he died as a slave. Numbers were not low. It's a matter of controversy, but from 500,000 to more than 1 million Latin Europeans, men and women, were kidnapped and taken to North Africa. And some were quite fortunate because they were rescued by the Trinitarians and later by another order, the Mercedarians, who paid the ransom for them. And to attract people and gather the money, the Trinitarians built marvelous churches. There is one in Livorno, not far from me, and even a small one in the town where I live, Castellina Marittima. Now, Barbary pirates were liquidated in the 19th century, curiously mostly by United States, because for United States, Mediterranean trade was very important. And when they emerged as a nation, they decided to systematically pay the ransom, not passing through the Trinitarians, and also to bribe the pirate chief to leave American alone. But it came out that in the year 800, payment to Barbary pirates were 20% of the American federal budget. So they decided to gather a coalition where the navy of the Kingdom of Two Sicilies was also an important player, but the countries as far away as Sweden joined, and they defeated once and for all the Barbary pirates. But the question remains, what do the Trinitarians do today? Because one unintended byproduct of the defeat of the Barbary pirates was that the Trinitarians declined. There were no ransom to be paid. Well, they still worked against slavery ideologically, but they went into a decline until in the 20th century, in the year 2000, they more or less reinvented themselves by gathering and discussing that there are many forms of slavery. So, for instance, they fight against forced labor and forced prostitution, but they also have a very important ministry of defending freedom of religion or belief of all faiths, headquartered in Canada. So when I went to Canada in 2014, unfortunately, I was not yet familiar with the Tai Ji Men case, even if the Tai Ji Men case was already going on from 18 years, because it would have been ideally suited for my speech in this conference, where, of course, cases of enslaving people by denying them the right to proclaim and to live their faith through torture or detention were discussed. But the Tai Ji Men case would have illustrated perfectly a point I made in that conference, that it's also slavery to deny form, freedom of religion or belief through administrative tools. There are many ways to enslave people, and there had already been, particularly in the United States, a reflection of how excessive taxes or taxes imposed unjustly are also a way of enslaving people. So I didn't know the case of Tai Ji Men in 2014, but I know it now. And it's a case of administrative enslavement. Women and men of Tai Ji Men have been deprived of their freedom or of carrying out their wonderful mission, as we saw in the video of peace and love freely and honorably. They've been deprived of their reputation and subject to ridicule and slander. And finally, they have been deprived of their property and their sacred land. And some, including the Shifu, his wife, the Shimu, and two Dizis were even deprived of their liberty and detained, although that the detention was unjust, was later publicly recognized. So what they may perceive with good reasons as a vast conspiracy to deprive them of their basic freedom looks like administrative persecution at its worst. They need the modern versions of the Trinitarians to rescue them, and they may be encouraged by the fact that so many international scholars and human rights activists, so to speak, took the blue and red cross of the Trinitarians and are ready to fight and to play this role to combat this modern form of administrative enslavement the Tai Ji Men are suffering. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Introvigne, for reminding us a too forgotten story with which I'm personally familiar, having written a few things on the subject. And again, thank you for tying that to the Tai Ji Men case. Very, very relevant. Our second speaker for the first section today is Mr. Peter Zoehrer, an Austrian national. He's a journalist as well as blogger and the executive director of the Forum for Religious Freedom Europe. Peter, the floor is yours.
Hello. It's a wonderful opportunity to meet my good friends, the experts and scholars, but also representatives of Tai Ji Men. And I'd like to comment Tai Ji Men for this perfect timing of this, to synchronize this event with the International Day for the Abolition of Torture. Can I get my screen share, please, for the PowerPoint? I have a PowerPoint. Fabienne? Okay. Very good. So it should work now. Thank you. Just a moment. Oh, this is the end. Okay. So, slavery is has a very long tradition. So most of the religious folks remember very well the exodus of the Israelites from Egypt after 400 years of slavery. And so that was severe slavery. That was also administrative slavery played a role in this. There was, of course, we also know about the slavery and persecution in the Roman Empire. And we have modern slavery, as Massimo mentioned and Marco. Modern slavery in the 21st century. There are various forms of modern slavery. One of them is of course, the human trade, especially women's trade. Thousands of women are traded as sex slaves today. But what is now in the news, and thanks God is in the news. This is the enslavement of Uyghurs in China, Xinjiang, by the CCP. I don't want to always use the term China because the Chinese people are wonderful people, but the problem is the party. And that is very serious. Now the world is looking towards China in preparation for the Winter Olympic Games. And there are strong lobbies against holding the Winter Olympics. But we will see if the lobbyists succeed. Many human rights activists and victimized groups, expatriates from China, etc. It doesn't look like they succeed because the the IOC, they are very, very much involved with Chinese finance, and that is a severe problem now. I do hope that there will be a severe boycott in one or the other way of the Olympic Games. So, and then I just like to mention something about religion versus slavery. The biblical concept of imago Dei, which basically means man is created in the image of God, which is based on Genesis. This served as a guiding principle in the abolitionist movement. That was in the 18th century in Britain. It was started by the Quakers in the late 18th century. And although the Enlightenment movement, they have already pushed for the abolition of slavery. However, who really made the breakthrough, the defining moment was really when the Christians in the UK and led by William Wilberforce made this point. And then there was some new abolition laws were created, etc. And then it was like a wildfire. More and more also other countries who had empires before they started to stop slavery. And Wilberforce was, it seems that he was a good media man because that was the version, what you see on the left. Even coins were printed with that. That was the version of modern social media. It says here, am I not a man and a brother? A black slave. Huh? Am I not a man and a brother? So if you have in the backdrop the concept of imago Dei, that man is created in the image of God, and that we are all brothers and sisters, as most of the, especially the monotheistic religions believe, that we are all brothers and sisters, and our aim is really one world under God, or one world family under God. So then why would the black people be excluded from that? So they are our brothers and sisters. So that was a very powerful point which was made. And so religious freedom has an incredible power. The strive, man's irrepressible strive for religious freedom. Religious freedom is the most basic human rights. Article 18 and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Many call it the mother of human rights, or the mother of freedom rights. And there are three very powerful examples from history where it shows that how powerful the strife for religious freedom is. First, the exodus of the Israelites out of Egypt. So that was an incredible incredible story, actually. And I was fascinated by reading this. I read it quite a few times. And there is something to be learned from this, which is, we have to learn from history. I will get back to that later. There's something to be learned from this. Tai Ji Men should not make the same mistakes. Otherwise, their journey of persecution may be extended, as it happened to the Israelites. What they did was, many complained and said, we want to get back to Egypt. We had enough food. Okay, we were slaves, but we had enough food. We had this and that. And we didn't have the incredible difficulties of wandering through a wilderness. And so, as the story goes, God prolonged their journey, so that their minds can be purified. Then another point is, we should never fall in love with our, this is the mindset of slaves somehow. This is the slave syndrome. You get used to it, but never fall into this trap, members of Tai Ji Men, to get used to to your plight. The other problem may be what we call the Stockholm syndrome, that you fall in love with your torturer, with your slave master. And then the second, the expansion of Christianity after the persecution by the Roman Empire. This is quite an incredible story too. So after this incredible persecution and enslavement, Christians expanded throughout the world. And finally, I'd like to mention the example of the Pilgrim Fathers, their flight from Europe. Basically, their flight from Europe was a flight into religious freedom, a flight from religious intolerance, religious persecution, because many of them came from religious minorities. And that's why today the United States has a profound love for religious freedom. Even the First Amendment, freedom of opinion, freedom of speech, etc. So United States will always be ready to help you if you're entailed, if your religious freedom is entailed by higher powers. So the strife for religious freedom is incredibly powerful. And then regarding the lessons from history, there's one Nobel laureate from Austria. Her name is Ingeborg Bachmann. And she used to say, history teaches us constantly, but sadly it finds no students. What a very true statement. So let's learn from history. And I'd just like to give a few points of advice, because my expertise is media. And I'm almost finished. I think my time is up. What I advise religious minority groups in many, or quite a few of these groups turn to Fautré for advice on how to do religious freedom advocacy through using the social media and mainstream media, etc. So engagement in social media, I always advise them to get their members to get their own Twitter accounts. Each member should have a Twitter account and a Facebook account and whatever, Instagram, etc. And they should always push the any kind of news of violations of religious freedom through this social media. The more, the merrier. It is very important to address this issue in the social media. But not only this, also establish blogs and publish about violations of religious freedom. And then mainstream media do press releases, file press releases. It may cost some money, but every nation has this press agency where you can buy a press release, basically, and do this regularly and address your problems in this. I'm not sure how it is in Taiwan, but you're probably doing this already. Maybe I'm teaching to the converted here, preaching to the converted, preaching to the choir boys, as they say. But I don't know enough about Tai Ji Men and their religious freedom advocacy. But these are the advice which I give to religious minority groups who are persecuted. And then human rights organizations. I can see that you are already doing this very well. You are very, you have turned to powerful organizations like CESNUR and, Media Bitter Winter, etc. And Human Rights Without Frontiers. There are many human rights organizations who may be willing to take it up. And then international organizations like UN Human Rights Council, etc. And here in Europe, we have, of course, also the OSCE, and there are other organizations. US State Department, they are very willing to help you. So they regularly, the US Embassy are regularly interviewing me on religious freedom violations for their to update their reports. So they will take it up. Try every opportunity. So finally, I just want to say that state-sanctioned enslavement of the Tai Ji Men movement exposes Taiwan's vulnerability in the eyes of the international community. Taiwan is now so much under pressure, as all of us know. They are so much under pressure because of the China threat of invasion, and they need all the help they can get from the so-called free world. And it does not help Taiwan. And this you have to run home to the Taiwanese political elite as much as possible. It does not help them if they are being seen in a public or in the international community violating basic human rights, basic freedom rights, and which we can see as the administrative enslavement of the Tai Ji Men movement. So this point needs to be made again and again and again. So that is all I want to say right now. I hope my advice is of help to you, and thank you for inviting me. Thank you very much. I wish you all the success you can get. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter Zoehrer, for his much food for the brain that he gave us today on different subjects, different angles of the same topic, tying the Tai Ji Men case of slavery to ancient times, modern times, and giving Tai Ji Men Dizi good advice as a professional journalist for being effective throughout the media. We now have our third speaker today for this first session. He is Mr. Claudio Torrero, who studied philosophy and co-authored the book on the famous philosopher Raymond Panikar. In 2018, he became a Buddhist monk with the name of Bhante Dharmapala. We thank Mr. Francesco Curto, founder of Comitato Fede Insieme Faith Together Committee, and the previous speaker in some of his webinars, who was instrumental in inviting him today to join us for this important webinar on the Tai Ji Men cave. He will now take the floor, and Professor Introvigne will translate Mr. Bhante Dharmapala. And the floor is yours. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for having invited me. Sorry, I speak Italian. La duplice veste che mi caratterizza, di studioso di filosofia e di monaco buddista, non mi dà titolo per entrare nel merito strettamente giuridico della vicenda a cui ci riferiamo. Posso invece contribuire a una possibile futura filosofia del fisco a partire da alcuni appunti di carattere storico e antropologico. Penso...
Traduco. I am here under two hats, as a scholar of philosophy and as a Buddhist monk. What I'm not is a lawyer, so I cannot really comment on the legal angles of our problem, but what I will try to do is to propose perhaps a possible or future philosophy of taxes based on historical and anthropological considerations.
Thank you, grazie. Penso che questi appunti possano anche gettare una luce sulla vicenda Tai Ji Men, che mi ha molto colpito e su cui tornerò alla fine del mio intervento.
I believe that these ideas may also be relevant for the question of Tai Ji Men. I was very much moved by the Tai Ji Men case, and I will return to it at the end of my speech.
Quel che diamo comunemente per scontato, cioè il dovere di ciascun cittadino di contribuire all'organizzazione sociale attraverso innanzitutto il pagamento delle tasse, a una più attenta analisi chiama in causa nodi rilevanti della vicenda umana.
Normally we take for granted that every citizen should pay taxes and contribute to social organization. This is true, but it's more complicated than this, and it involves key features of the human experience.
È abbastanza evidente che la nozione di prelievo fiscale è del tutto sconosciuta nei piccoli sistemi prestatali. Si ha in quel caso un'economia comunitaria a cui ciascun membro direttamente concorre, beneficiando al tempo stesso delle risorse che il sistema mette a sua disposizione. Le cose cambiano col formarsi delle grandi compagini statali in conseguenza della rivoluzione agricola, quando sorge un'entità finora sconosciuta che noi chiamiamo Stato, che è una parte del sistema sociale che si costituisce in forma autonoma assoggettando il resto, ovvero dominandolo e fornendo al tempo stesso dei servizi che promuovono la riorganizzazione delle relazioni e della vita in genere.
Perhaps we don't consider it, but at the beginning of human social history in the pre-state era, there were no taxes. It was rather a community economy where everybody contributed and take the resources of the communitarian system. So things changed with the agricultural revolution, when greater social systems were born and something we called the state. And the state is a part of the social system constituted in autonomous form and subjugated all the other parts of the system, but at the same time offering to the rest of the system services allowing the reorganization of complex social relations.
Al centro di questa entità, che è lo Stato, troviamo innanzitutto un nucleo che potremmo definire ideologico, che fornisce il senso dell'identità collettiva attraverso un sistema di credenze e pratiche attraverso cui gli individui si riconoscono parte di qualcosa di ideale che pervade l'esistenza e si trasmette di generazione in generazione. Non è difficile capire che ciò è costituito essenzialmente dalla religione, che è un complesso organizzato di simboli, miti e riti che fornisce il collante della vita collettiva.
Oh, in the state there are two aspects, and the first aspect is ideological, and it's the creation of a collective identity through beliefs and practices citizens may recognize during their existence and transmitted from generation to generation. And the traditional state, this is essentially religion, that organized complex of symbols, myths, and rituals, which works like a glue keeping together the collective life.
Accanto a questo primo nucleo, ne troviamo un altro, un secondo, che è quello della forza materiale che si fa carico dell'unità e della stabilità interna e della protezione verso minacce esterne. Benché il primo nucleo goda generalmente di un prestigio superiore, cioè la cultura e la religione, è questo secondo nucleo a essere decisivo nell'organizzazione sociale. Come diceva Marx, lo Stato è il monopolio della forza considerata legittima. Se nella vita di tutti i giorni un individuo commette omicidio, questo è generalmente punito, ma lo Stato può prescriverlo su larga scala, inviando una parte della popolazione in guerra. Allo stesso modo, se qualcuno si impadronisce di parte dei beni altrui, si trova accusato di furto, rapina o estorsione. Ma se è lo Stato a farlo, si tratta di un'operazione del tutto legittima, denominata per l'appunto prelievo fiscale.
Then there is the second feature, and that's material force, which was needed to protect the unity and stability domestically and to protect against external threats. Normally, we can say that the first aspect, that is culture and religion, is more honored. But in fact, the second aspect, the force, is crucial to social organization. As Karl Marx said, a state has a monopoly of the force and legitimizes the use of the force. If an individual perpetrates a homicide, the individual is punished. But if the state decides that many should be killed and killed in war, that's considered as legitimate. If in everyday life somebody takes the goods and properties of another person, this is punished as theft. But if the state takes your money and your property and calls it taxes, this is generally considered as legitimate.
In epoca moderna, lo Stato si è via via caricato di funzioni diverse che entrano sempre più profondamente nella vita degli individui, ad esempio l'istruzione, la sanità, l'assistenza sociale. Si potrebbe però pensare che tali funzioni non fanno parte del nucleo profondo dello Stato, in quanto quest'ultimo potrebbe benissimo lasciarle svolgere ad altri. Nella visione laica moderna, la religione poi dovrebbe essere del tutto separata dallo Stato. Ci sono invece due funzioni che lo Stato non può delegare ad altri e sono quella per l'appunto dell'esercizio della forza, quindi polizia e forze armate, e quella fiscale. Cioè, nel suo nucleo non ulteriormente riducibile, lo Stato è inseparabile da una struttura capace di imporre che le sue decisioni siano eseguite, quale che sia la volontà di chi ne è coinvolto, e da una seconda struttura che assicura il reperimento delle risorse materiali necessarie, nuovamente a prescindere dalla volontà di chi è chiamato a concorrervi.
So the problem is that the modern state increased the field where it is active, and it achieved sort of monopoly of instructions, schools and universities, health and social assistance. But we can say that these functions are not essential to the state. It is also possible that these functions are left perhaps more effectively, totally or in part, to other social actors. And of course, it's even more problematic when the state enters into the field of religion, which should be totally free and separated from the state. So essentially, a state has only two essential functions that it could not lose. One is the force. So the state is the only source and manager of the police and army. And the second is taxes. The two are correlated because to manage the force, the state needs resources. And so these resources are taken through taxes without asking the citizens whether they want to pay these taxes or not.
Dal che deriva una inevitabile conseguenza, che l'azione del fisco non sarà mai accolta con entusiasmo da parte di chi ne è soggetto, perché vissuta come una sottrazione di risorse a favore di un apparato visto in fondo come parassitario, cioè molto vicino alla schiavitù, quindi. Il che non corrisponde del tutto al vero, perché lo Stato, fin dai tempi degli antichi imperi, contribuisce in modo determinante con tutta una serie di infrastrutture o anche interventi diretti in economia alla creazione delle condizioni di prosperità economica della società. Ma appare chiaro come tali condizioni siano anche in funzione dell'accrescimento del drenaggio di risorse, consentendo allo Stato di estendere sempre più la sua presenza. Si arriva così ai giorni nostri e a quelle molteplici funzioni di cui lo Stato si fa carico.
Nobody is enthusiastic to pay taxes because the feeling is these taxes are taken to support a parasite or to enslave, in fact, the citizens. This is not totally true because we should acknowledge that since the time of the ancient empires, which were already criticized for this, the state also performs a number of useful functions and may help the economy inter alia by building infrastructures. But it is also true that particularly the modern state is extending, perhaps improperly, its field of activities, and so it needs continuously more resources, hence more taxes.
La situazione attuale presenta poi problemi ulteriori. Proprio quando lo Stato ha esteso a dismisura il suo apparato, al di là forse di quel che la società possa sostenere, quest'ultima, almeno nelle sue parti più intraprendenti, ha trovato il modo, attraverso la globalizzazione dell'economia, di essere sempre meno soggetta al prelievo fiscale, grandi gruppi, paradisi fiscali, eccetera, multinazionali, eccetera. Ne deriva una condizione in cui i sistemi statali
Can Gabrielle Zoehrer mute herself? Because otherwise we don't hear Bhante Dharmapala. Claudio, puoi continuare.
Sì. Ne deriva una condizione in cui i sistemi statali mantengono la presa su certi settori della vita economica, i quali sono sempre più spremuti, ma hanno in buona misura perso il controllo di altri, che hanno acquistato una potenza superiore a quei sistemi, a quegli stati, fino a determinarne gli indirizzi. Non sappiamo come le cose evolveranno, se ad esempio chi ha acquisito un tale potere getterà le fondamenta di una nuova organizzazione statale a livello planetario, né se a quel punto accetterà di assoggettarvisi fiscalmente. Ma quel che è certo è che i destini futuri saranno disegnati da varie circostanze, tra cui la capacità di ripensare, forse anche radicalmente, le modalità attraverso cui i vari componenti di una società contribuiscono al suo sostentamento, cioè quello che circa 6.000 anni fa ha preso la forma del fisco.
I now come to the present problems, which are quite serious, because on the one hand there is this expansion without limits of the state, which perhaps goes beyond what society is capable of tolerating. But on the other hand, there is the reaction against this of the strongest taxpayers, and these are the global corporations who find a way to operate transnationally and pay very limited taxes. So the consequence is quite dramatic, because all the weight of the taxes is imposed on certain weak sectors, while the strongest sectors which operate globally manage not to contribute very much to the taxes and even to escape the system of the national state. So we don't know about the future. Perhaps because of this, and we cope with the cooperation of these transnational global players, a new planetary world order will be built with a totally new idea of taxes. But what is clear is we now live in a totally new and different situation with respect to the invention of the taxes some 6,000 years ago. And the danger of this present situation is those who are perceived as weak by the states and not capable of asserting their rights, they bear all the burden of the tax pressure.
Nel frattempo fa bene chi leva la sua voce quando il sistema fiscale, spesso debole con i potenti, si fa forte prevaricatore con le minoranze, anche spirituali. Mi sembra sia questo il caso di Tai Ji Men, vittima alla fine di un atteggiamento prepotente. Sono proprio queste prepotenze, contro cui i discepoli Tai Ji Men giustamente protestano, che una filosofia del fisco dovrebbe aiutare a prevenire.
So the problem today is that the tax system is weak with the powerful and strong with the weak, and it can act in an unjust and arrogant way against minorities. And this includes spiritual minorities. And now I come back to the case of Tai Ji Men, which is an example of how the tax system, which sometimes doesn't manage to get taxes from the powerful, is arrogant and unfair against minorities, including spiritual minorities. And in the Tai Ji Men case, we see this arrogant attitude of the tax system. So I believe Tai Ji Men disciples are very much right in protesting against this arrogance and injustice. But what I would like to offer to the Tai Ji Men disciples through my contribution is a general spiritual, philosophical, moral reflection on the taxes. And I believe considering what taxes were and are today may help Tai Ji Men in their fight. Thank you.
Grazie molto. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bhante Dharmapala, for your precious reflections on the proper role of the state related to the taxation problem, because it becomes quite frequently a problem. The dynamic relationship between taxes and state and liberty is a topic that have not abandoned humanity since, as he said, the beginning, and it will not abandon us pretty soon. So we need to keep an eye on this problem. Tai Ji Men is very relevant to give us examples of what people can suffer and how they can protest in the most peaceful way, as Tai Ji Men, Dizi, do. By introducing Mr. Willy Fautré, we approach to the second session of our today's webinar. Mr. Willy Fautré will introduce the testimonials and give them the floor for their remarks during the second session. Mr. Fautré is director and co-founder of Human Rights Without Frontiers in Brussels, who co-hosts this series of webinar, and so also today's webinar. It is my pleasure then to give Willy the floor.
Thank you very much, Marco, for this introduction. And before we start listening to some testimonies and some disease in the next few minutes, we would like to show you a video about the story of the indigenous tribes in Taiwan. What is important with this video is that the original language of those indigenous tribes is used, but also original song and original attire. So that makes it really an exceptional document that I invite you to watch before listening to the next speakers and witnesses. The video, please.
Besyara ni wahrunila.
Oh ya, besyara badai wahrunila. Lungum kendali ka maki yung nama ka. Boleh bela payah kau ni nyara. Samki aki tiang kau orang ci koi payah baulung yang terseng sebaulung. Mau bela ku orang hasa. Musam askara yo.
Lu besyara ni.
Anak kia kuzu nentai lah.
Oh, besyara sudah.
Oh lah, besyara.
Kia ngan sa.
Oh, hata terlalu cikai kia.
Đâu cikai, Thái Thái. Cái anh cikai lali cikai kucing.
Lali lah cikai ga. Ini so ngilis, ini so tiapun uye. Mau so i uriko. Simna musa seba dai ahola. Ini ba isu hani laga mau so sinsi ro taupola. Ini ba ba iro aku ni ano hani.
Lali ro hon so ni ga. Sakai ni petana pi.
Ini petana. Jadi hani hera mau belai kora ko kanya nukra rumah haiti la nanu mo haiti la ba on musam Tai Ji Men ro nanu mo runi la
la dai ni ha
ke mo balai runi la asun sukung Tai Ji Men la nanu payo kum khan mo balai Tai Ji Men la payo kum khan mo belai kora ko hai ni la
Và lẽ anh à, thì lẽ hí số là xem bà xuân nó qua rồi.
Nói số, nó có niro hắn nữa, bây giờ niro na ha, bây giờ niro na ha, ông có điều sinh na ha đâu gì.
Qua là tao mà Tai Ji Men rồi, hí đó, mô tô lại đó, rồi sư phụ đó,
bị ăn xem nhà lại luôn ngân.
Sư phụ à, cả luôn thái qua là tài ăn nữa, anh ấy Dizi gì, rồi
lại qua là cốc cả hắn nữa, xả cây cái sợi lại qua là.
Lại luôn ngân sư phụ đó.
Vậy và chỉ phong người ấy cái trên sang quan cái hậu quan đó này, bây giờ ấy.
Sao bị?
ấy cái qua ra cũng mà na Tai Ji Men hắn nữa, hay là cái luôn nhá qua ra, bây giờ mà cái hơi cái máy anh, cái hơi nhá qua ra cốc cả hắn này, anh số to cái hơi nhá cái máy anh, bây giờ ấy tắc hắn, cũng hậu quan đó hắn này.
Cái hơi cái.
Cái hơi, tắc hắn có tiền sử cái. Cái hơi vào đây cái máy anh có hậu quan rằng anh đi, qua đó có Tai Ji Men anh cả, mà cái có cao tầng phải anh cả, u suy, umat có ya anh nhá, anh đã hậu quan rằng ya vào đây, mà xin có riêng anh cả hậu quan rằng cả, ini nhá vào đây chú pha anh đi, nano anh siêu to cái ini nhá cái đại uji, nano atun kian lain ako kanon makakasa ka hasalo niya pasaba kora ko galo niya kora ko nano karawin niya hasalo niya kamayan li ota balay kalay kora ko yohan ni ko kanon hani ga ya ko kanda niya ka yohan ni so ka ngora iwawi kora ngot wala ra iyas niya kalay hani la
Allah ya balay ro
nano anang balay mahuin ka Mohon kung ya ko luto mo, ham kaya pa nakinya ibaon ko ra ko san mara.
Singrasi ko sing de.
Singrasi
de.
Masih hane ko kay mo dara. Lungo mo nanak lang nano pa was tikay was tayan daw.
Pa was tikay mo de.
Mahoy si mo kwara. Ya balay ko ho kwang rahani. Maka ihoy kamayan wadata kamyano hani lahoy isula hoy nawagi nano nungon mo gaga hokwanan hani galawin Muana kia tikai yang sinya ana susu tohani ga saroha ragi korako bawau na kaya nani nano aring soni ko kata ga mana utuhria balai kwaraga nakisami maas kwara nakisami maas kwara.
Thank you very much for that very interesting video that shows how important it is to transmit to the next generation the heritage rooted in our education, in our traditions, in our religions, and not only religious issues, but what make really your identity as the language, for example. This should not die when one generation starts replacing another one. And in this case as well, the experience dating back from now 25 years and the wisdom that has been accumulated by the disease and thanks to Dr. Hong also needs to be transmitted and is transmitted to the next generation. really a transgeneration duty that everybody has. I will now give the floor to Mr. Oliver Lee, Secretary General of the Association of World Citizens, so that he can share with us his own experience.
Ladies and gentlemen, good day. The harm caused to the people by the government's violation of the law, as mentioned by many Taiwanese scholars, might not even be believed to be true if it had not happened to them. The violence of abusive state power in Taiwan does exist. A few days ago, Taiwan caught $2 billion worth of drugs coming from the Golden Triangle in Burma, though not the whole of Burma is dealing drugs. Similarly, not every official in Taiwan is a bad official, but there is indeed a golden triangle of government violence in Taiwan on the issue of taxation. What is this triangle of taxation in Taiwan? The first one is that some tax officials issue tax bills without solid evidence. The second is that some administrative court judges know that the people's evidence is correct, but they ignore it. The third is the officers of the Administrative Enforcement Agency. Generally speaking, if the Administrative Enforcement Agency knows that there are doubts about the verdict, it should stop executing the death sentence. However, knowing that there are problems with the Tai Ji Men case and many other tax cases, they still continue to enforce the law for the sake of performance and bonus. For example, Mr. Chen has a company trading Taiwan's futures, and the National Taxation Bureau, NTB, issued an indiscriminate tax bill, only adding up the sales and the computer transaction records of the securities company, without deducting the buying price, and directly calculating the profit at 29% of the total amount of sales. His case is as unfair between the people and the government in law as Professor Wei mentioned earlier. When the tax bill was issued for more than 1 day, because Mr. Chen was not in the country and did not request for review before the payment deadline, it was then confirmed that the tax bill was changed to $55 million and the NTB made $55 million profit in 1 day. He went to the administrative appeal and the administrative litigation, but all of them were rejected directly after the deadline. He said that he was willing to accept the penalty if the deadline was exceeded, but the way the NTB calculated the tax bill was simply messy. It could even force the people to accept such overdue tax bills. However, in the Tai Ji Men tax case, Tai Ji Men won 18 times, the NTB has repeatedly exceeded the deadline and has not processed new illegal 3 or 4 months after the Tai Ji Men victory, forcing the people to accept such tax bills that exceed the deadline. By law, the NTB should revoke a tax bill whenever it does not comply with due process of law and violates the law of evidence, but in Taiwan, however, the reality is much different. NTB persecuted freedom of religion in Tai Ji Men tax case. I've summed up other human rights being persecuted in the Tai Ji Men case other than the most fundamental freedom of belief. There are also the right to equality, the right to non-discrimination, the right to culture, the right to thought, the right to effective judicial relief, the right to a fair trial, the right to property, the right to freedom of movement. And some Dizi passed away due to physical and mental diseases caused by the insults from the prosecutor. Just about every human rights you can think of have been violated in the Tai Ji Men case, which is a collection of human rights persecution. In fact, the Tai Ji Men case is not difficult to understand or to resolve because the case was charged without evidences and against due process of law. It should have been revoked long time ago. From the very beginning, prosecutor Ho Quan-jen, on the day of the search, described the bank deposit of $610,000 as a fraud of $3.2 billion, which is basically a preparation of false evidence to harm people. The tax collector, Mr. Shiyushing, said in a video before his death when the prosecutor and investigation bureau, came to him, he asked, "How is this income calculated?" They said, "Don't worry about it." He asked, "What should we do if we don't worry about it?" They said, "Just do it." This is also not in line with the proper legal procedures, and this is also illegal. In the case of Tai Ji Men, it was the prosecutor who first said that Tai Ji Men had violated the law by evading tax, and then the National Tax Bureau, NTB, came to cooperate with prosecutor, which is against the legal procedure. It was only after the trial that the judge found it weird that there was not even a tax demand. The NTB was so shocked that it rushed to copy the data of the Investigation Bureau in 2 days' time and issued a fabricated tax demand, which is against the legal procedure. The entire criminal trial review has not yet been completed, and it is not clear whether it is the proceeds of fraud or the actual tuition, and the NTB has issued a tax demand on the basis of tuition. This is also against the legal procedure. The third trial verdict in the criminal case confirmed Tai Ji Men not guilty, but the NTB ignored it and continued to issue tax bills, which is also against the proper legal procedures. After the meeting between the representatives of Tai Ji Men and the Executive Yuan, the Ministry of Finance, the Ministry of Justice, the NTB, and all other relevant ministries, the consensus was reached to investigate the nature of the money in dispute. The results of the investigation showed that all 7,401 replies were gifting. But the NTB ignored the favorable evidence for Tai Ji Men and only recognized half of the replies as gifting. Tax bills were issued on the other half, which was considered tuition by tax authority. This is in violation of principle of evidence. Wu Zixin, the then state tax commissioner, knew full well that in February 2012, all 7,401 replies were gifts. But after Zhang Xinghe, who had concealed evidence and forged documents in the early days of the Tai Ji Men tax case, became the Minister of Finance, he quickly issued tax bills that were half tuition and half gifts. Do you know what happened to Wu Zixin? He was appointed director of Taipei Tax Office in March 2012, but quickly promoted to Director of Taxation Bureau in January 2013. He is probably the first ever director of Taipei office moving up to Ministry of Finance on such a fast track. I'll remember your name for the rest of my life, and I think every Tai Ji Men Dizi will remember you. Why did he get promoted so quickly? What is his special merit? Think about it. He was eventually promoted to the rank of Undersecretary of Finance and retired in 2020. There are many more, and one can say that all possible violations of legal proceedings by the NTB can be found in the Tai Ji Men case. Professor Kenneth Jacobson of Temple University said the Tai Ji Men case is the case that he has encountered the most violations of proper legal procedures. In a few days, the United States will invite Taiwan to the Democracy Summit. With such a 24-year persecution of religious practices and government officers turning deaf ears to, I really don't know if Taiwan's Ambassador Xiao Bai Kim and Digital Minister Audrey Tang will attend the summit with confidence. Is Taiwan qualified to attend such a summit to discuss democracy, rule of law, and human rights? It's such a irony. Therefore, I really hope that with the efforts of all of us, such unjust cases as the Tai Ji Men and many other tax cases of injustices will be solved once and for all. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Lee, for reminding us of the abuses of state power, in particular with its tax administration, a heartless tax administration, and also the violations of human rights just for the sake of performance and mainly bonuses. These violations were really egregious. And legal procedures were also violated. They were fabricated procedures and so on that you enumerated. But at the end, you opened a door of hope, in fact, reminding us that whenever and wherever there are international political meetings, human rights conferences, and so on, voices should be raised to denounce those practices in Taiwan. The second speaker that I will introduce is Dr. Alex Liu, Hazardous disaster rescue consultant, the fire department at the Kaohsiung Airport Station, having a PhD, environmental engineering. The floor is yours.
There is a movie called Back to School, and there is a line in it that touches people's hearts. Have you forgotten, or are you afraid to remember? This is a description of the state of mind of the victims and perpetrators of the many cases of political repression during the White Terror. My mother's physical, mental, and spiritual health improved, and she was reborn after entering Tai Ji Men in 1993. Out of deep appreciation for Shifu, she gave Shifu some collections of wooden artwork, including a peachwood sword. On December 19, 1996, prosecutor Ho Quan Jen accused Shifu of raising goblins and evading taxes and used this peachwood sword as evidence. How would you feel when you heard that? Indeed, my mother was very angry. Why? It was a gift of gratitude to the person who saved her life. But how could a prosecutor who represents the state power to smear someone, to fabricate evidence, to frame someone and to smear the dignity of a person to such an extent? My mother immediately gathered the whole family to go on a hunger strike in front of the office of the president, and at that time Shifu told us to use love, tolerance, patience and peace, and to wait for the judicial investigation. Only then did we stop such a strong hunger strike. After 10 years and 7 months, we were cleared of all charges and taxes after 3 judicial trials. But what we couldn't believe is that our lands and properties were auctioned off on August 21, 2020, a result of the erroneous tax bills from 1996. The Control Yuan rebuked prosecutor Ho Quan Jen for 8 major violations. Such a wrongful indictment has been proven wrong in the court of law. But we still have to suffer the pain for 25 years. Later on we realized that we are not alone. There are many victims of tax cases like us. In the case of Wu Pei Chun, a tutorial teacher, and in the case of Yi Young Chun, a returned student of science and technology, and in the case of Huang Wen Huang, a public interest lawyer, each of these cases is marked with blood and tears. Even Professor Zheng Jian Yuan, a professor of law, has been persecuted by unjust tax bill. There is a Mr. Jian Yong Song. I am very impressed. I was with him in front of the Ministry of Finance. He was also faced with a tax bill that was created out of nothing. He said, "I die, my son will come out to fight with you. My son died. My grandson will come out to fight with you." I can't imagine the grief and anger in my heart. He was a victim of the White Terror, and was imprisoned in Green Island, and finally got his name cleaned. He also told me that he escaped the ravages of the White Terror, but could not escape from the wrongful tax bill. Last year Mr. Jian passed away, and now I see that his wife continues to fight. Many people told us that you just negotiate with tax agents, cut a deal and settle the case. That would have been much cheaper and easier. This is what I think makes Shifu different from others. Shifu told us that what we have to pay, we will not save a penny. What we should not pay, we will not pay a penny. Insisting on truth is the real kindness. Compromise will encourage the wrong to continue and many more people will suffer. That's why I'm going to reveal the flaws of the tax regime and show you the accomplice structure. Government officials cover each other. They issue interpretation notes to replace the laws. They even issue tax bills based on guessed amount. Huang Kun Guang, the former auditor of the Kaohsiung Municipal Bureau of Taxation, was very angry about the tax on Tai Ji Men as this was an illegal tax bill on a speculated amount. The wrongful tax bill has costed taxpayer assets and violated rights to life and properties. If taxation can be this way, there is no need for audit. This is the urge from a retired tax agent with conscience. In addition, the appeal system is not functioning and the whole system is torturing people. The appeal committee is composed of people in favor of tax authority. Civilians' winning rate against government is only 6%, but the losing rate is 94%. And what is even more terrible is that the judge would return the case back to original disposition agency for another decision. As a result, people are caught in an endless treadmill. In addition, the enforcement agency is even more horrible. As some scholars say, it is a licensed debt collection syndicate. I know some good enforcement officers are conscientious. He will think for the people, he will distinguish between right and wrong, and even apply for a halt to enforcement. We are very helpless to meet the enforcement agency director Lin Guangzong, deputy director Chen Yingjin, and Li Gaifan, who completely ignore the criminal court rulings of no crime and no tax. They also ignore the ruling of Supreme Administrative Court. They went on to auction off our lands for performance and bonus despite of the facts and evidences against their wrongdoings. This is the biggest disaster for the people. We can see that overcollection wins a bonus. The judges did not avoid conflict of interests. A judge who ruled the case in the lower court and ruled the same case in the higher court again. can you expect different results? This is why we attempt to understand the nature of the legal and tax virus, and of course, we followed the whole family into the reform, and our parents constantly led us to devote ourselves to legal and tax reform. There was a military sage, called General Yue Fei, who made a statement in the time when people were not living in peace, saying that civil officials did not love money and military officials were not afraid of death so that the world could be peaceful. This phrase is also very suitable for the present. Let's look at the current situation. I myself feel that when I was a military officer, I was not afraid of death. Shifu taught me to be loyal and courageous, even sacrificing my life to protect our country. But when I saw the civil officials, a few of them were called rogue officials by foreign scholars, they were greedy for the bonuses, and for the protection of the officials, they would not hesitate to harm the people. General Yue Fei was unjustly killed in 1142, and after 20 years, he was rectified in 1162 and was posthumously awarded the title of King Yue Wamu, which was a time of totalitarianism. Vindicated in 20 years. The Tai Ji Men case has not been rectified for 25 years now, and our lands for self-cultivation have been auctioned off. Former professor of Taiwan University, Chen, Qilong and professor of Aletheia University called this case as demon-revealing mirrors that has revealed many demons and monsters. Finally, I would like to call for the elimination of the tax virus. And for these officials who have violated the law and abused their power, they should be held accountable. We cannot let the perpetrator go unpunished, not because we have a deep grudge against him, but because this perpetrator will harbor more perpetrators, so that many victims will suffer. Secondly, the Tai Ji Men case must be vindicated. Professor Huang Junction of CKSU, University, said, "This is a 228 events in the tax law. Vindication of the case has significant meanings in our human rights." He wrote a book on the case. His endeavors touch many taxpayers. Finally, it is very important to implement the mechanism to correct mistakes. This is the West German Chancellor Willy Brandt, who knelt at the Warsaw Memorial to memorialize the massacre in Poland. This kneeling has awakened their dignity, and his apology has healed the wounds of cruelty. When we demand accountability and apology, we really hope to correct and heal the system. Einstein said, "The world will not be destroyed in the hands of evil, but will be destroyed by indifferent bystanders." So let's all take actions to inject justice, conscience and reform to the system.
Yes, White Terror, of course, is a very dark page of Taiwan's history. And a number of Tai Ji Men disease have experienced that in their early age. As the mother of Alex Liu said. But the dictatorship of the state administration with Tai Ji Men is, according to her, stronger than the dark pages of the dictatorships in Taiwan in the past. Because after 25 years, they have not managed to get rid of it. And this is really a very sad story, just because a few people, bureaucrats, are greedy for bonuses. But again, what is important in in Dr. Hong's doctrines is that the experience of the older people must be transmitted to the younger generations. And that's what has happened through this testimony again, that the children of those who experienced the persecution in the 1990s by the tax administration, those children and grandchildren maybe, and I hope not, they go on fighting with legal means and peacefully, as Dr. Hong always told them. I will now give the floor to our third speaker, Annie Zhu, from the USA. She's Tai Ji Men Dizi. The floor is yours, Zhu.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Willy. Hello, everyone. My name is Annie, and I'm honored to be able to participate in today's online forum. I started practicing at the San Jose Tai Ji Men in the United States in 2004 and have been practicing for 17 years. After I started practicing Qigong, my family also started to practice Qigong because they saw how great of a place Tai Ji Men is. Being able to practice Qigong at Tai Ji Men is like entering a treasure mountain. With Shifu's teaching, I have found my direction in life, and I am more confident in myself. We are now entering the 25th year since the Tai Ji Men case has occurred. For the past 25 years, Tai Ji Men brothers and sisters and Shifu have gone through ups and downs, time and time again, but so far they have not received a positive response from the government. As an overseas Dizi, the case has caused a lot of mixed feelings. Although I have not personally experienced the Tai Ji Men case caused by the religious crackdown at the time it first occurred, over the years I have seen my Shifu brothers and sisters go through these 25 years filled with many difficulties. There is still a way to go on this road to redress this case, and many brothers and sisters are no longer in this world with us, and they haven't gotten the chance to see the day when this case is over. The younger brother and sisters who were still children when the case first started have all grown up now, and they continue to shoulder responsibilities of the case and work hard to protect their families and the country. I have been practicing Qigong since 2004, and I have seen our Shifu teach us by example, words, and unspoken teachings. Although the government has not yet returned him and Tai Ji Men innocence, over the past 20 years, Shifu has brought brothers and sisters to the 5 continents to promote the concept of love and peace. Our Shifu has also brought brothers and sisters into the United Nations to work hard for the well-being of everyone. And yet, the Taiwanese government still cannot return our innocence. After joining Tai Ji Men to practice Qigong, besides my body becoming healthier, my facial complexion has also become better. The most unexpected personal gain is that my nervous personality has been greatly improved. 17 years ago, I would get angry really easily when I'm hungry or even when I didn't sleep for 8 hours. I would constantly go through emotional roller coasters. In addition, I had to take care of a baby who was less than 3 years old, as well as a newborn. But because I had high expectations of myself, I wanted to give my 100% towards everything. So I got anxious easily. Every time I feel nervous, my body would feel terrible. And because of this, my family around me also began to suffer from my anxious personality. Thinking about those days, it is really unbearable to look back. Just after my son turned 1 year old, I was recommended by a friend to practice Qigong. In less than 5 months of practice Qigong, my sleep quality improved, and I was in better spirits every day. With all these improvements, I began to recommend my family, relatives, and friends to join Tai Ji Men to practice Qigong. The first person I recommended to practice was my mother. My mother is a patient who was infected with hepatitis C due to injections. She was often in poor spirits, got tired easily. Her face was dull, and her physical discomfort also leads to her often emotional ups and downs. So indirectly, this also created pressure on me and my siblings. In just 3 months of practicing, her body improved a lot. Her jaundice index has dropped and her liver function index has returned to normal. Even the doctors found it incredible, especially for those overseas who are not always with our family. The peace of mind brought to us by Tai Ji Men is very important. This is a place where we can learn to balance our body, mind, and soul. If the Taiwanese government insists on not seeing or hearing us and continue to delay in redressing the case, it is clearly depriving individuals of their freedom of religion and belief. In a democratic country, this is absolutely forbidden. 300 years ago, the United States fought 4 years in the Civil War in order to ban slavery in the South and free African American slaves. At the time, President Lincoln issued a famous Declaration of Human Rights, stating that all men are equal and have inalienable rights. 200 years later, Martin Luther King went on to fight for equal rights, laws, and even gave his life for a dream he had, that one day Black and white people can coexist peaceful and equally. President Reagan said that freedom, not free, means that for freedom, we must bravely stand up and continue to fight. The Tai Ji Men case has lasted for 25 years, and brothers and sisters are still using peaceful and rational way to fight for the government readdress. But we are always ignored. On 9/11 this year, we returned to New York to mourn and comfort the people affected by those who died during the terrorist attack. We also continue to speak up for human rights because I think everyone's human rights should be respectful at the most basic level, at least to be free from fear. Our Shifu, Dr. Hong Daozi, has promoted the concept of love and peace throughout his life. He has taken his disciples across the 5 continents and met with many heads of the state. I hope that love and peace will be deeply rooted in the hearts of the people and be free from war and fear. I also hope that my country can finally take on Tai Ji Men's case and revoke the illegal tax bill and respect our basic human rights so that our future generations can live in a world of freedom and equality. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony, which was very interesting because it shows the really very positive impact of Qigong and on the physical, psychological, and spiritual health of the practitioners. And now we know that the teachings of Dr. Hong are not only limited to people living in Taiwan, but it is expanding to other countries and other continents. And that will also be beneficial to people who don't have any Taiwanese roots, who are American or who are European. So that is a very successful story that needed to be shared. And in your the last part of your presentation, you insisted on the practice of love and peace as Martin Luther King shared with the people of his groups in the United States. And I think that's a message that should be also followed and practiced by anybody around the world, including in Europe. Thank you very much again for your testimony. And now I will present the next speaker, Mr. Jeff Kuo, Business Development Manager and Tai Ji Men Dizi. Mr. Kuo, The floor is yours.
Thank you, Willy, for the introduction. So I'm very glad to have the chance to talk about the oppression of Tai Ji Men in Taiwan. So the recent slavery activities began in the 15th century when the Portuguese captured Africans and transported them back to Portugal. Later, other European countries also participated in this kind of slave trade. The slave trade activity went on for hundreds of years until the mid-19th century, when countries began to legislate to abolish slavery and prohibit the slave trade. The essence of slavery is to oppress others for one's personal gains. The exploited are not able to terminate the labor relationship with their free wills. The abolition of slavery is an encouraging progress in the history of human rights. Although slavery has been abolished, the phenomenon of enslaving others still exists today. The methods of enslaving others have evolved into ways that are less conspicuous. Nowadays, the methods employed by oppressors may include debt bondage, violence, or intimidations, etc., to restrict freedom of movement or choice of life, and force others into providing endless labor. The oppressor can be an individual, an organization, or a state. Slave owners in the past are such individual oppressors. As for organizational oppressors, such as large multinational companies, for example, that coerce farmers to accept below market prices for crops such as coffee, cocoa, soybean that they have worked hard for. The farmers can never get rid of the shackles of poverty. This is also a form of slavery. It is not necessarily apparent and easy to recognize when a state exercises an act of oppression. It is because such oppression will be carried out by the authority through a judicial or an administrative means. In terms of judicial methods, for example, Pakistan and Bangladesh have blasphemy laws, and Hong Kong has the Hong Kong National Security Law. These are the more prominent examples of state acting as oppressor. Taiwan is a democracy. However, there are still persecution by the authority in Taiwan. Some government officials use the authority of their office to oppress people for their personal gains. For example, Mr. Huang is a pro bono attorney for the court and handles state cases. He received tax bills from National Taxation Bureau, or NTB, for one of the cases he handled. Professor Zhang's home appliances caused a fire, and he was compensated by the manufacturer for the losses. However, the NTB claimed the compensation should not be classified as a relief for the loss and should be listed as an income. Professor Zhang was required to pay income tax and a fine. Among the cases of persecution people with public authority, the most prominent one is the Tai Ji Men case. In 1996, the Taiwan Authority instigated a political purge. They used the NTB to issue 6 illegal tax bills to Tai Ji Men. After 25 years, the NTB corrected 5 of the bills to 0 and left the 1992 tax bill of the same nature uncorrected. That led to the illegal seizure and auction of Tai Ji Men's sacred land. Cases are like an invisible that have been imposed on all tax victims in Taiwan, such as Mr. Huang, Professor Zhang, and tens of thousands of families in Tai Ji Men. They have suffered so much, and are still unable to break free. The 25-year-old Tai Ji Men case, as well as many tax victims, are the victims of this persecution. The NTB in Taiwan is like the Hydra of Lerna in the Greek mythology. It cannot be tamed and cannot be killed. Taiwan's grassroots legal and tax reform movements in recent years aim to abolish this enslavement through taxes so that people will not be enslaved by illegal taxes and regain the freedom and dignity they deserve. I have lived in the US for more than 30 years. The insomnia and gout that have bothered me for years were alleviated soon after my practice of Qigong at Tai Ji Men. In addition, the emotional issues brought on by work stress also improved significantly. The Qigong practice at Tai Ji Men is all-encompassing. It benefits not only the individual's physical and mental health, but also the health of the community and the world. Tai Ji Men's master, Dr. Hong Daozi, teaches his disciples to understand oneself, to distinguish between true and false, right and wrong in the world, and to understand the relationship between people and nature and the world. All men are created equal. The infringement of basic human rights and the act of enslaving others, whether explicit or implicit, should not exist in the past nor now. The abolition of slavery in the mid-19th centuries was in progress in the history of human rights. However, the phenomenon of enslaving others still exists today. It will take the awakening of all the world citizens, including that of the government officials, to look at these implicit enslavements squarely for human rights to progress another step forward. We must do the right thing based on our conscience. I implore the Taiwanese government to redress the issue for these tax victims, including Tai Ji Men. This will improve Taiwan's human rights protection. It will also have a positive influence on safeguarding international justice and the world's sustainable development. Thank you all for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Kuo, for your testimony. And you said something that is very important, is that all human beings are equal and free. And of course, the opposite, the other face of the coin is that slavery is the absolutely opposite of what the principle that you highlighted. And unfortunately, many European nations took part in slave trade across the Atlantic, but not only European nations. Throughout the whole history of humanity, it happened with other civilizations and inside civilizations. But in the case of Tai Ji Men, this is administrative slavery. And there is a common point with the general principle of slavery that we all share. It's that it limits or abolishes the freedoms and the rights of people. And when the tax administration persecutes you and says, well, you have a huge debt to pay in terms of taxes, although they are unfounded and illegal, then the tax administration is limiting the freedoms, freedom of movement, freedom of enjoying health and security from the state, and so on and so on. And so that link is not artificial at all. It is a reality. It is another form of slavery that must be fought against, but again with the same principles and values of Martin Luther King and Dr. Hong. So with peace and love. Thank you very much for your contribution to this debate. So the next speaker is the youngest speaker we will have ahead in this sort of seminars. She is 15 years old and her name is Hurles Chen. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Mr. Willy. Hello everyone, my name is Hurles. I'm 15 years old. I'm a Tai Ji Men Dizi. I joined Tai Ji Men in 2009. I've learned how to be brave and calm down myself whenever there is a crisis. The reason why I said so is because I was often isolated by my classmates when I first come to South Africa. And all of this is due to the language barrier. So whenever I encounter this situation, I'll try to calm down myself, then tell myself that I do not care about what others think. After that, I'll walk to them and encourage myself to say hi to them. Of course, what I'm saying right now is just a tiny piece of benefits that I learned in Tai Ji Men. The benefits that I learned in Tai Ji Men is more than you think. Tai Ji Men illegal cases began since on 1996. It has been almost 25 years. When I was 10 years old, I learned of the existence of the Tai Ji Men's illegal case and began to participate in the campaign to vindicate the tax fake case and the Kaido protest. I was very surprised when I learned of this event. Tai Ji Men for me is more like a home. Sisters and brothers will enlighten me attentively when I'm down. They will encourage me and support me when I'm feeling sad. But I did not expect that for me. A place full of warmth like home was sued by prosecutor Ho Kwan-ren for raising goblin out of nothing. Although the 3 trials of the Kurd were found to be innocent and no tax owed. The IRS did not comply, did not revoke all illegal tax bills. And even the IRS official said in the media that the Kurds' ruling is not counted. Tax collectors in the country that we all trust can illegally impose taxes for their own merit, fame, and gain, resulting in illegal tax bills that will never end. You can see that everywhere in Taiwan. In a democratic country like Taiwan, there are more than just the Tai Ji Men's illegal case. There are more tax victims in the crisis, seeking the chance to survive. My parents' company is actually one of the many tax victims back then, because the tax officer of the IRS used the name of tax inspection to disrupt the normal work for the accounting department and demanded $2 million for the companies for no more trouble. It was unbearable, so we had to immigrate with our family. After we settled in a foreign country, we even feel the judicial difference. Even South Africa can do better than Taiwan in terms of justice. I've seen many tax law cases in South Africa. I once heard that a senior of water company was pursuing profit in the account of boss because of his merit, fame, and fortune. But the senior deliberately increased the amounts on the bill and asked the boss to pay the amounts he shouldn't pay for it. The boss immediately sued the senior after he found out, and the judge acted in accordance with the law very sensibly. Returned the full amounts to the boss and giving the senior the punishment he deserved. I really appreciate the judges in South Africa because they act in accordance with the law and did not compromise to mistake. I really hope that the governments of Taiwan can take responsibility for mistakes and have the courage to correct them. There is a saying that you do not get embarrassed when you make a mistake, but it is shameful if you do not admit your mistakes. In the past 25 years, Tai Ji Men has made a lot of efforts to promote culture. We have participated in many United Nations conferences and traveled to many non-Taiwan diplomatic countries for cultural performances. It is nothing more than hoping to make Taiwan known by the world. Tai Ji Men was invited to participate in the UN Sustainable Development World Summit, held in Johannesburg, South Africa in 2002. The Star, South Africa's largest circulation newspaper, published a Tai Ji Men Sisters Phoenix Wings on the front page, and the former president of South Africa, Mr. Frederick William de Klerk, who was the winner of the Nobel Peace Prize in 1993. When he visited Taiwan in 2001, he rang the peace bell of world peace and made a wish for peace. Here was his speech. Through the fight against poverty, the expansion of democracy, and mutual contact, we will achieve peace. Dedicate the life to peace for the world. This is my Shifu's ambition to lead us to promote conscience, love, and peace. However, the Taiwan's government has repeatedly ignored the Tai Ji Men's case, and even our many activities on Kaidao. Friends in the media were unable to report due to the government's suppression. However, the truth will come to light sooner or later. Under the reports of foreign media from many countries, the Taiwan's government still insists on the attitude of evasiveness, which is really chilling. Tai Ji Men will never be the last person in the world, but Tai Ji Men will always lead everyone towards fairness and justice. My Shifu has always promoted the era of conscience and love and peace. Conscience is the foundation of everything. Only conscience can lead the world to peace. If we all gather together, we will be able to touch everyone's heart. Maybe you have already rescued many people by doing a trivial good deed. You must always believe that good people are rewarded. And don't forget that there are many people in this world who are working hard for world peace just like you. We look forward to awakening the conscience of the world, not only abolishing the slavery system, but also exposing the wrong phenomenon of the enslavement of the people by laws and taxes, so that everyone can live and work in the peace and enjoy the freedom of victimization and fear. Let us cheer for each other and work hard. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your very powerful message, Hurles, and especially for the energy that we feel through your speech. But it's energy that we now find in the youth in general around the world, in the movement for climate change, for example. Young people like you hope in the future, and young people like you travel a lot. In your case and some other disease, to share the Tai Ji Men message outside your country. And this shows again that you have that power and that energy that is sufficient enough to spread the message of Dr. Hong and to transmit again to others of your generation the teachings of Tai Ji Men. Thank you very much for your contribution to this debate. And we are now going to listen to the last speaker, Dizi, Kiki Liu, engineer. And
thank you, Willy.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm Kiki. Today, I would like to share my story with you. When I was a kid, my parents took me and my sister to Tai Ji Men practice Qigong. We are really happy in Tai Ji Men until one day, when a native persecutor used fake evidence to pursue our Shifu. I was 10 years old that time. Watching Tai Ji Men case on the television, the news anchor reported the information that I have never heard before. I attempted to connect the dots, but I couldn't locate any hint or clue. I recall my mother taking me to Tai Ji Men after pursuit. Even so, such terrible, ridiculous things happen. Even all reports slander Tai Ji Men and everyone spoke bad things about us. We could still hold each other's hand tightly, sing songs with love and peace to wait our Shifu and the Shimu back. I could still feel the powerful energy from those memories even now. Cai Fuqiang, a Tai Ji Men volunteer defense lawyer, stated that the prosecutor Ho Kuan-ren research and the management of Tai Ji Men case was unlawful and false. Among them, Ho Kuan-ren's misuse of power was the most over the line. Our Shifu was taken to the custody only based on Ho Kuan-ren saw a shadow flash across Shifu's eyes. This is both ridiculous and unbelievable. The supervisory office also identified Ho Kuan-ren's 8 serious infractions of rule and regulation in the 2002. All those evidence and facts are indicating that Persecutors use the traditions of violence to eliminate and oppress people. Time passed. A teeny girl grew up, began to understand what has occurred to us, to Tai Ji Men, begin to realize how silly and amazing such things are. Even in the 21st century, democracy and the rule of law are not as far as fair and equitable as textbook claimed. Officers' unlawful and abusive behavior continues, and the people are continually being persecuted. Tai Ji Men is only one of many unfair cases, but it is also an important case in history that contains all illegal and injustice. This lawsuit has lasted 25 years, from 1996 to 2021. At the time, I was an elementary school student. Till today, I not only graduated from the school and start working, but also become a mother and have my own child. Recall the year that I was pregnant, despite the fact that I was going to give birth soon. On the day of 19 December, I insist on carrying my 9-month-old belly, walk on the Kaidao to protest. That was a freezing winter. Dark night sky was raining. The ground was wet. I heavily walked on the damp and freezing road. The stinging cold wind is chilly, like our mood, sad and helpless. After my daughter was born, she started to accompany with us to Kaidao to protest. From she was a few months old baby, and later she grew. She was older. She still accompanied with us to Kaidao every year. 1 year old, 2 year old, 3 years old. This year, she is going to 4 years old. And yes, she's still accompanying with us to pursue for justice. 25 years, Tai Ji Men case struggle 25 years. When can real justice come in? It's not terrible to make mistake. The worst thing is inability to confess, fix, and disregard faults bravely. Kenyon Jefferson, professor of law at Templeton University in Philadelphia and the former advisor to President Clinton, has studied the Tai Ji Men case for many years. Professor Jefferson pointed out, there is no and was no application of rule of law in Tai Ji Men case. Taiwan is an excellent of democracy, a beacon of democracy in an area that has absolutely turmoil, political turmoil, as well as oppressions in the region. The beacon faded with Tai Ji Men's case. I love Taiwan. I love the country of Taiwan. I love the people of Taiwan. But what's happened here has emerged from conduct of some rural bureaucrats and the government's officials. This is now being tolerated by governments itself, and that is shameful. I really hope government could face and correct this fault as soon as possible, that justice really implement into Taiwan. Taiwan could really become a democracy country. Thank you for all your attention. I believe we are on the way to the justice.
I hope so as well. Thank you very much, Kiki, for your very interesting and moving testimony, and also showing again that the teachings of Dr. Hong year after year get rooted more and more deeply through the generations. Your parents were Dizi, you are Dizi, and you have a baby who will certainly be taught in the principles and the teachings of Dr. Hong. Thank you very much for your sharing with us your experience. And now we have finished this session with the testimonies that we have listened to. And I will give the floor. Maybe there is another video before the floor is given to the conclusions of this webinar.
I think now it's time for Professor PierLuigi Zoccatelli to take the floor. PierLuigi is a professor of sociology of religion in the Pontifical Salesian University in Turin, Torino, Italy. He will conclude our very rich webinar of today, and with some final remarks and all of his consideration. PierLuigi, Professor Zoccatelli, the floor is yours.
Much kind of you, Marco. Thank you for all these speeches, and it is my task to offer some words of conclusion to this webinar. Rather than summarizing the different papers, I would propose 3 general comments about the International Day for the Abolition of Slavery we celebrate today, December 2, the Tai Ji Men case. First of all, one of the most famous living sociologists of religion, Rodney Stark, has insisted in several books that the elimination of the slave trade, one of the most horrible plagues in history, was the work of activists whose motivation were religious. After other popes had tried in vain to stop the trade in slaves, Pope Gregory XVI, in his bull of 1839, in Suprema Apostolatus, categorically forbade what he called the inhuman slave trade. The Pope admitted that Christians had been unfortunately involved in the slave trade, and his predecessors had not been successful in stopping it. Pope Gregory mentioned that many Roman pontiffs of glorious memory, our predecessors, did not fail, according to the duties of their charge, to blame severely this way of acting as dangerous for the spiritual welfare of those engaged in the traffic and ashamed to the Christian name. End of quotation. Since the trade continued, Pope Gregory solemnly prohibited, by virtue of our apostolic authority, all the practices above mentioned as absolutely unworthy of the Christian name. By the same authority, we prohibit and strictly forbid any ecclesiastic or lay person from presuming to defend as permissible this traffic in blacks under no matter what pretext or excuse, or for publishing or teaching in any matter whatsoever in public or privately opinions contrary to what we have set forth in this apostolic letter. End of quotation. Even the Pope, with resistance from some American Catholics, and at any rate the majority of the Americans were Protestant. However, it were Quakers first and other Protestants later that formed the backbone of the abolitionist movement, which eventually led to the abolition of the slavery in the United States in 1863. While those defending slavery used economic arguments, abolitionists maintained that all human beings, no matter what their conditions or the color of their skin, had been created by God with equal dignity and basic human rights. As Rodney Stark has written, at a time when it is fashionable to mention religion mostly for its shames, we should not forget that the abolition of slavery was promoted by Christians in the name of Christianity. Second, that the fight against slavery was conducted in the name of dignity and rights God has given to all humans had important consequences. It made eliminating slavery inseparable from protecting the other fundamental human rights. A human being whose fundamental rights are denied may not be legally a slave, but is also in a situation similar to slavery. Third, unjust taxes are also a form of slavery. It was the famous Russian writer Leo Tolstoy who coined the formula tax slavery, although for him it referred to taxes on poor workers who were oppressed twice, first by giving them low salaries and then by taxing their salaries. In the United States, the idea of taxation as a slavery was given a broader meaning by libertarian thinkers. While Catholic social teachings disagrees with these libertarians and affirms the duty to pay taxes, it also condemns tax injustice that manifests itself both substantially through taxes so high that they become indeed a form of slavery, and procedurally through an unjust administration that does not allow the taxpayers to assert their rights. In 2009, during a field trip to Africa, Pope Benedict XVI stated that excessively high taxes may sometimes be illegal. What he meant was that they may be substantially illegal, even if formally they may have been promulgated by the governments according to due procedure. This leads me to my third comment. I have sometimes the impression that the discussion between Tai Ji Men and the Ministry of Finances in Taiwan is what in Italy we would call a dialogue between deaf people. Tai Ji Men often use the word illegal to designate the tax bill imposed on them. The ministry answers that they were formally correct and thus cannot be illegal. There is a confusion here of the meaning of the word illegal. Slave trade was carried out in accordance with the laws of the time. Yet, as Pope Gregory XVI and Greek Quaker and evangelical abolitionists argued, it was substantially and morally illegal. Taxes may be both promulgating according to a legal procedure and substantially and morally illegal, as Pope Benedict XVI stated in 2009. The tax bill imposed on Tai Ji Men, the tax bill for the year 1992, when it was maintained after the other had been corrected to zero, the auction and seizure of Tai Ji Men sacred land in 2020 implemented decision taken by the authorities through formally correct documents. Yet, the Taiwanese authorities' position that this may seem by definition legal is wrong. There are two levels of illegality, and the substantial one is deeper and more important. Substantially, the administrative actions against Tai Ji Men were in fact illegal and entered the domain where administrative injustice becomes administrative slavery. Before greeting all participants, please allow me to present two short videos that we will now watch. The first one, What is the Truth About Tai Ji Men Case, is a music video about Tai Ji Men, while the second one is the animation Kids from Paradise. And with this last comment, waiting to see the two videos together, I thank all speakers and participants and hope they will join us again for our next webinars. Thank you.
illegally auctioned off the sacred land of Tai Ji Men. The land was illegally taken into state ownership. Where is the royal government of just conscience? Where are justice and human rights? What is the truth about the Tai Ji Men case? Taiwan Supreme Court found Tai Ji Men not guilty of tax evasion or any other charges. The National Tax Bureau and the Ministry of Finance reneged on their promise to revoke the tax bill. The National Tax Bureau illegally auctioned off the sacred land of Tai Ji Men. The land was illegally taken into state ownership. Where is the royal government of just conscience? Where are justice and human rights? The righteous people are united with conscience to defend justice, human rights, and peace. The righteous people are united with conscience to defend justice, human rights, and peace.
In Taiwan, we as Little Winter saw at work the Taliban of the National Tax Bureau or Taliban of the Administrative Enforcement Agency, 55-year-long persecution of a peaceful spiritual movement in a democratic country such as Taiwan. The Tai Ji Men case is internationally exemplary and important, and yet we plan to continue our campaign about it. Our voice will not be silenced until the voice of justice will speak and solve the case.
In heaven, where it is quiet and peaceful, a group of children accidentally made some mistakes. Greedy plucked flowers. Grumpy started fights. Ignorant always got into quarrels and scolded others. Arrogant spoke ill of others. Suspicious loved mischief. The God of heaven spoke to the children sincerely.
My children, the laws of heaven are very strict. Look, the planet shining with blue light is called Earth. You are going to do self-reflection there. Change yourself for the better and do not make the same mistakes. Only when your hearts are perfectly purified can you return to heaven. I now give you a bright treasure that can help you solve the difficulties you will encounter on the earth. Don't forget it!
While reminding the children, the God of heaven reluctantly watched them leave. The children of heaven came to earth one by one. They discovered that it was a comfortable environment full of blue skies and green lands, birds and flowers, and everything was thriving. In the beginning, they could remember the reminders of God of heaven, and with love they lived with all the creatures on earth in harmony. They colored the world with joyful laughter. They believed that in the near future they would be able to return to heaven to be with God of heaven again. After some time, the children became lazy. They skipped self-reflection for 1 day. They skipped self-reflection for 2 days. And from the 3rd day on, they forgot God's reminders completely. The 5 poisons made their hearts lose their way. Greedy selfishly destroyed nature for personal gain. The earth on which the people depended on to live fell out of balance. Grumpy started wars and fought over land. All living creatures lived in fear and sorrow, and wailed in pain. The evil spirits gradually gathered into a big demon with a ferocious face with horns on its head. The big demon morphed into various forms and drove away the goodness in people's hearts with its evil thoughts. The earth couldn't stand people's arbitrary destruction. Spring, summer, autumn, and winter were all out of order. Arrogant created numerous fires which almost merged everything and wiped out all the species. Suspicious created floods which destroyed houses. Earthquakes and hurricanes were everywhere. The beauties of earth were about to disappear. The demon in the heart of ignorance drove him further to do harmful things. He urged the government that did not know how to love people to give corrupt and greedy officials bonuses for issuing illegal tax bills, seizing people's property, and forcefully auctioning off people's lands. The poor people had no way to ask for help and could only cry in the dark. The demon grew in power by using its deadly tricks. He spat out horrible viruses. The infected people crowded the hospitals, and many of them lost their lives. To prevent the spread of the viruses, people wore masks, distanced themselves from each other, and stayed in their houses. At this time, it was as if someone hit the pause button on Earth. It was empty everywhere. The merciful God of heaven couldn't bear the misery of earth. He started to call out to people. Some people could hear him and remember the bright treasure gifted by God of heaven, the beautiful and radiant conscience. When they are calm and begin to listen to their conscience, they realize as they follow the voice of their conscience and reflect on themselves daily, they can protect their hearts from their anxiety. They found wisdom that would help solve their problems. People started fixing their mistakes, and by doing good deeds, they made amends for their past mistakes. They started passing this beautiful message, and eventually, more people were awakened, and the power of good thoughts grew, and the evil thoughts had no choice but to flee. In the end, there was nowhere for the evil spirits of the big demon to escape, and there are no longer the 5 poisons to feed him. As a result, he vanished. The earth finally got a chance to rest, and all living creatures could once again coexist in harmony. The earth regained its previous beauty. The children, who had changed to be kind again, improved themselves each day. They transformed into peaceful, compassionate, wise, humble, and joyful, and finally found their truest and purest hearts, with which they could return to their happy heaven again.